and maybe we can get out of here early. We'll see. That y'all are tired after your first day. Did you reset some of your procedures for today? Tighten things up and do little things different? And
I just lightened my expectations.
a little meaner, yeah.
I said, you know what, you guys are going to be the way you guys are going to be. I understand you just came back from vacation. I came in and did a whole bunch of planning. My wife's pregnant, so I wanted to make sure that it's within the next 2 months that we're going to have a baby. So I've got 2 months planned ahead. So that I can, looks like it's this time, get on my iPad, send a sub plan off. I know that some person will be able to come in and figure out what I need them to do. And so I came in with all this expectations at the beginning thinking, all right, they're going to be ready. I'm so ready. I'm beyond ready. We're going to get all this stuff done. And they're like, we need to talk about what we did. No, we don't.
5 minutes, that's all they got.
When my wife was pregnant, my brother called me and said, is it a boy or a girl? I said, I don't know. Well, he says, well, how am I going to know if I'm an aunt or an uncle? All right. We stopped last time at the point where you were actually going to make VIP lessons, correct?
Yes.
Does that sound about right? And so it might be helpful if you sat with somebody that was close to your teaching assignment or grade level. You may actually have to visit with other people in the room to figure out what they teach. You guys are all good. Everyone else?
Yes.
What grade you teach or what subject you want to work
What are you
on?
teaching?
We're 6th grade.
I'm 6th grade.
6th grade.
Yeah.
Anybody in high school?
You know where please?
High school what?
Ag?
Ag
Oh, God.
science, ag mechanics, ag science, math.
One of those seniors in 3rd grade.
So science teachers.
You have third?
You're on your own.
I guess that's what.
I heard there's an ag mechanic position.
Bye.
Come over there, or you want me to come over there?
High school.
What grade are you?
You already
6.
filled it?
Yeah, the teacher that was
I'm
there,
kindergarten.
that
Oh,
We're pretty close. Yeah. There's not much, just the size of the
was
backpack.
working.
Yeah, exactly.
She's now,
And she lives there. I know
And
who
our
she is.
smell.
Oh,
Really
really?
bad.
That's good.
I'm not looking forward to
That was a bad situation.
Not to get that hygiene talk. So you guys, this is what you order.
Well, I have deodorant is your friend everywhere. I covered that 1 month ago.
All right.
Y'all smell
So
like
you
an
there?
old sandwich.
All right, so now if you're in elementary, you're going to have to still pick a subject to agree on. I have magic markers up here. There's the poster. So you're going to write a step-by-step lesson
No, let's do the
and
lesson
then
that you
present it. And we got the camera live for you, so that's all
Oh,
good.
man.
I'll post this
do they
lesson.
have to make it a?
Most of them are private, but this one I'll put on Facebook,
Oh.
YouTube.
What if the kid not have a grade? She's the only one. Because she has grades on the regular.
It's upside down.
You need to talk to your tech.
Everyone have a piece of paper now? You guys
For us, it's Nicole.
D plus, the D.
Just transfer whatever it is on the thing.
Whatever happens.
Toss me one of those pins.
Sure.
6 is the 4th and 5th. I'm the only one that's in the low grades.
You need to get with kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
No,
He's like, no, thanks.
3rd is as low as I go.
Is it?
Other than that, there's too much crying. It's like,
You may wanna talk
crying, go outside. Go outside, stand over
Do you
there.
have a bone sticking out of your skin?
Oh,
No.
William.
Stop.
Nothing really wrong.
Well, you have grade.
Oh, man.
As long as it wasn't black and orange.
We probably should write.
Oh, do you only have Dodger blue?
My kids can't read.
Well, this isn't the year.
What the hell is an O plus?
You gotta get on the, instead of 5 or an S. We're doing that.
20 minutes to
Right.
prepare this.
We're doing
I
that.
don't know, I don't write the. Well, yay, we're gonna wait, Madera.
This is the year that it's.
There's a lot of homes about where I live in like Granada. Like
Yeah.
the street, personally, the Granada homes are built a couple years ago that went on sale.
You guys
Yeah,
pick.
people were like, they're really nice homes.
How do I?
I don't know.
Is the question.
See, like, because they're not owners or renters.
You guys go with me.
Okay, we'll see.
But I think they're selling it because it's set for sale.
So they're taking. See, I need them to do that in August. Around there.
I'm sorry. Because those homes, like, we bought them for like 189 and they're going up. 215, but my the house right next to me is going for 215. And there's one that we sold for like 240. I know a realtor and he's like really awesome. Shut up. He's awesome. Like, you'll love him. Like, he'll get you what you want. So whenever you start looking, let me know. He'll like show you around everywhere. Wait, are we planning a lesson right now? What are these deep buses here?
Alright, so.
No, whatever. Whatever happens, happens. Because my
Sorry, you can do a science sports
do
video.
you?
Or someone might think you're drinking.
She's like, then she goes, well, she didn't like, yeah, that's what they're saying. Like, then what are you saying? It's like,
Pictures, outlines.
that's exactly what you're saying, but I didn't grade this one. I'm sorry. You try. You are not
You need to pick a team and an outcome writer. You guys should not.
you're getting a B.
Right,
This will be close to your
pick your subject, when you pick that.
What do we want to do it on? Like,
Yeah. Do I low grade program?
yeah. It's different. Wait, on the right.
Yeah, I know.
It's different, huh?
Feels weird.
Yeah. That's what I said today because I was helping her.
It doesn't show us.
I know.
I was counting out.
I know. I just went next.
Well, no, it's not that, it doesn't have to be
And maybe if I was a little bit more established, we put down
is
how.
hippos.
So I can afford to buy it.
Well, there you go.
So it's,
Hopefully.
put
So down the line, I'll be there.
and then everything that you know about hippos really should be outside. You start
I'm enjoying, you know?
filling it in.
I need a team.
Then you can start chunking your information for each section.
Yeah. Yeah. Round down. That'd be good. Round it down.
So I don't know if you want to do
No, I want the
The breath
yeah.
like the graphic.
I know that's like the only thing.
I took some out of there too.
The map.
What do you think?
Okay.
Sixth grade.
There's no Pepsi in there, so I didn't have make sure you grab.
Where do you? Let's go.
This is our topic here, hippos.
We're gonna go to your square.
What do you want on it?
Oh, special.
Like, are there requirements
What they
to the lesson?
Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Oh, there should be math.
famous hippos in history.
That's the easy one.
Yeah.
Or like,
There's no steps in ELA when it's like, hey, themes.
why is he famous?
Yeah, but
Discovered.
it's harder.
Yeah, step, yes.
Maybe like
Step 2.
area. I don't.
Like the area of a.
That's fine.
Oh.
If we use what my kids are doing, we're reading a story called Cardigan, the trial of
Is there a
Cardigan Joe.
parentheses? If so.
And we're doing mind maps about details and topics. And then UA, what I've been doing with UA is I showed them YouTube videos.
So I guess I
And it's first step. Major guys.
If parentheses.
So they listen to the video and they do their mind map.
I always forget from left to
Well,
right.
what's the main topic? The main topic today was giant slug.
we don't need a little
Do that, and then they come back and then they give me the details of the story. So I play the video once, and then I turn the video
I also
on
do
again,
the helper
and I
song.
turn off the screen, so it's just the audio.
It's like a rap
So
song.
they have to, now they're having to listen and try to.
I think I played that.
Without having.
On YouTube, yeah. Is he in a space, on
That
a
kind of works.
space suit?
Oh, no.
Same thing we're doing here, basically.
He's in a space suit. He goes. It sounds like.
Circle graph, or, yeah, circle map.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Are you gonna do houses?
This is a flow chart, the second one.
Okay.
So the first one was the.
Why did it both? This is the one I have in my closet. Should we do that? And then like next to the
Circle
people,
map.
no, just doing this. Draw a circle map. And one that I got over there.
And then put your topic in the small circle.
Dust ball.
What if it blew out in the heater? I wonder what's in the heater.
A fire. It's like a fire,
Hazard?
hazard, there you go.
Is that what the word?
Fire rating.
What am I looking?
You.
Oh, I know today, two of them, I was like, I don't remember which you are or who are we.
I have a set of twins. One wears the
And then,
the other's doesn't.
yeah, you could draw a
And the girl had
picture
her
and
hair
then just
down.
write a word in the center.
And I'm like, she goes, okay, okay.
Step 3, list as many facts.
You need two. The parentheses, excellent.
There we go.
Put
No, I was thinking.
in the outer circle.
Her fingers go down there.
You don't use interlock your fingers. Okay. Okay.
Multiplication. I mean, division.
They got the extra schedule mark.
And
Organize them in a flow chart.
Yeah, we're.
You got such great cheer.
Oh my gosh, it's funny.
Instead of learning
Too funny.
especially
YouTube.
so much effort. I'm guessing there's a lot of person,
Is it Epstein?
probably a lot of,
Mr. Sense?
what do you
You could
call
also use colors
First of all,
to highlight
they give
what,
the card back
what,
to the other
what information
Is there-
is
even
similar.
more, even more.
Yeah.
Let's see, however many highlighters. Three different highlighters to
Yeah,
color.
until you hit what?
That's why I made the mark because had it been as in the video. Have you seen how Mr. Sense gets his,
Yeah.
now in the marker? So here's the blueberry sitting on the card.
Oh!
It's funny. You're gonna like, really? Yeah. I love it. That's the funniest thing ever. There's one with the banana.
Yeah.
In third grade, you're gonna need this different. You're gonna get, well, I used these on these two, I colored with them, this one I used on a.
Now what's in my head?
Yeah, nothing worse than spelling stuff wrong.
No worries.
Organize.
Your details. Now just draw another circle graph, scribbles in it, and then we'll highlight in different colors.
Did everybody sign in?
Yeah.
If you didn't sign in, you're absent. Even if
Create
No. So it's so place the paper towel in the bag. So the paper towel is touching down. And then staple the paper towel to the bag. So that it's across the top of the bag.
Actually, that's not. That way they're not scared.
It really doesn't.
flow chart.
But it helps you get the idea of what they're understanding.
Last year.
Because for this lesson, they're trying to understand what do plants do. So, yeah, it's so photosynthesis. Sun, water, and providing them with all those things, and they need to say, okay, well, is it going to grow or not? Because the idea is they've never seen a seed grow.
I never, and I used
So
to
they
see
don't know
like,
what's going to but basically, we're still giving them what people need. It just doesn't look
but I remember
so
and
pretty pop.
I would be there.
I was coloring it.
Like, hi, how are you?
So quick of
For a little bit. Yeah, oh, that's fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're saying place.
You're such a good helper.
Gotta do something.
She's so sweet. We went on a field trip, and I think either were asking, what street are you on? And she's like, knew the street. What street is that?
Then I would do that for the first day.
Solid work.
And then when you go to start writing, you've got everything organized. So your step 6 would be your drafting.
Step six.
You might be trying to find.
Make this easy.
Your first bag.
So at the bottom of the
Oh, you bet.
No,
Oh, the parentheses?
we're just putting it together. So first off,
Good hair.
she did.
What's the actual? Yeah.
Because I was
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
now you're assembling. And then also the paper towel. So like the paper towel.
These things put my kids on.
Do they need a whole paper towel? What do they have to do? Yeah, probably.
No, because
Because
it's not
every time I
gonna
let
make
you
any
do
sense.
this,
know.
where are you going?
I was dreading
There was
that.
this,
Oh my God,
there was this squirrel, and then,
Then there was a
I had
dog.
pizza for dinner yesterday, and then the dog chased the squirrel. Squirrel.
Hey, you know, you get to talk about the right here.
I mean, I guess it technically doesn't really matter. You could just pull it down. It doesn't even have to fit in the bag.
Third graders like, the only one, and it took me about a week to figure out where it was coming from. And it would be right after first recess, you still kind of when you started telling them.
And they're like, I don't know which one to do. I'm like,
And then finally,
I'm like, please excuse me.
I called the only parent that didn't show up for their parent teacher. Foster, I found one to have her, so I didn't.
I want one that has everything.
Well, they adopted out her sister and her brother. They didn't want to take care of the adults. Honestly, Carolyn would have been the one that would have taken in all three of them.
Because I'm like, easy.
Her sister.
Work my way back here.
Her principal's name, oh, they were, Jared.
Because you have additional divisions.
And she's got all the and she clamped down on him like a crab with that knife. I'm not going. He has a video of her hanging from the doorknob in his office, screaming, let me out, let me out.
but is that
Wait. Oh, it's 9 minus 5. I thought it was.
okay, just change that.
And then divide. Yeah.
Okay, we didn't really do it.
I didn't use my, that was better than expected. Yeah. They're gonna post it like that.
One kid said something to him, he was like,
That one's pretty. They have like,
Same family or different?
so the fractions that I'm hearing are large.
really didn't want to go. She's like, yeah, my sister and brother.
I had never seen a fractions like that. I'm like,
She's like, I guess she can get on me like that.
I thought it was the stupidest thing ever.
There's just like, I think she's better off what she did. They give it that much. Yeah, they seem like at first, I was gonna try I've never met any of these kids before, I've known them for a month, so sit down and talk about it.
I know.
It was unreal.
I don't know if it's just something wrong with the show.
Kids who end up getting unreal. 1 year I had like 5. That's traumatic. I'm sitting all day waiting. Wow.
That is true.
They do that. I think it just gives them takes the awkwardness out of what do I call you? And they do it, but they know that there's no
They're like,
sentimental attachment to it. A lot of foster kids do Was he really? He's back up in the hills. He's not with Dad anymore. Yeah. They still have their hair. Or they cut it off.
But you knew I wanted to work. Yeah.
How much time do you need?
2 minutes.
He used to see things in class, like spirits. And I saged my room once because I'm like, he turned green. I mean, he turned a different shade of color because he saw something. And I said, I have sage. You want me to sage my room? He's like, you have sage? Yeah. They had lice. So one time, all I could think of was, oh God, I hope they don't have to cut their hair off. You know that they should not decide at home if they have lice? When they're unified, they keep them there because if they don't want them to the school. It's like they're already there, like they've already, yeah, pretty much.
How do you go out of lunch and find that? Sure.
I'll be like, give me some tea tree oil stat. We used to have my 3 kids. They would all, she'd come and pick them up and bring them back half an hour later. There wasn't.
No, left, and then one left, and then the second one
And she used tea tree oil on the kids.
Thanks.
And it took everything off their heads. Amazing. And infested with lice and nits. And she used tea tree oil. All 3 of them back in half an hour. But it would happen 6 times a year until CPS would go.
Oh, some may like.
Burn the couch.
That's all my kids do.
I know, because we're gonna do so get this. My kid ran away from her house with a boy over the
Oh no.
over the break, right?
Like 11, 12, the ones that get left behind. The ones that are like, you know, the 5 or 13.
All right, any volunteers to go first?
Sure,
Okay.
we'll go. Aw, man, and beat us to it.
Let's give our attention, they're gonna give us a step-by-step VIP.
Oh, VIP.
Okay, our VIP today is subtraction with regrouping. We're gonna start with 43 minus 7, and we're gonna tell them that for their step 1, they need to do a quick picture of the top number. So then we break it down into tens and ones, 4 tens, 3 ones. And then at the second step, we tell them that what they're gonna first focus on is just the ones. So they're gonna look and see that they have 3 ones on the top and 7 ones on the bottom. And then the third step, we tell them or ask them, do you need to regroup at this point? And so they're gonna take a look and they're gonna see that the 3 on the top is smaller than the 7, and that they're gonna need to regroup and take one of their tens from the 10 area and turn it into 10 ones. So then we're gonna tell them in step 4 to look at how many tens and ones do you have now. So now they have 3 tens and 13 ones. So we tell them to write that there. And then at that point, we'll tell them in step 5 to subtract their ones. So now they have 13 ones, and take 7 away from that. And then they get 6, yay. And now we're gonna tell them, look at the tens. And over here, we're gonna remind them that when we took one of their tens away to make it 13, that left them with just 3. And then they will subtract the tens, 3, and there's no number there, and so then that equals 3, and so their answer is 36.
So, if you were teaching this the very first time, would you be able to, would you show them first, or would you do it together, or, let's imagine that they've never done this before.
They've never done it before. I'd probably do it with them first, pick a different, a lot of times in the textbooks it has like a sample problem that you work with them together so that they can see the modeling of how it's supposed to be done, and then after you do one together, then you would let them go out.
And does there software that now that comes with the textbooks where you could throw this up on a Promethean board and have it embedded in your slides already?
Yeah,
Or do you have to draw this all out and make it yourself?
It has the actual workbook pages on the Promethean board. I normally, because there's so many glitches with the Promethean board, I do just write it by hand, and so we'll do a couple together on the board, or I'll have them come up and do it, or I'll have kids, like depending on where they are, I'll have different kids work out each step, like, okay, what's next? And that kid will tell me, this is what I need to do, and then, okay, what's next? And then this kid will tell me, okay, this is what I need to do.
Okay, so now, they've done this for the week, and you know there's gonna be a quiz coming up. And you say, okay, I want you to do, problems 1 through 10, go. Now what happens inevitably, when you say 1 through 10, go, what happens?
Yeah. The kids are gonna say, I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because you've gone through it now for a whole week, they need help. So yeah, so the hands go up now, based on our learning from this class, what do?
You go over and I think, weren't we supposed to tell them something good, point out something good that they did?
Praise.
And then notice what step that they need to work on
Prompt.
and say, and say, this is the spot that you're supposed to work on. This is, or take a look at this area again, and I'll come back and check on you.
Okay, so yeah, so he did step 1 perfect, I want you to do step 2, right? How long should praise, prompt, and leave last?
Very quick.
About 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
Right? Because what happens
Good
when...
job, looks good. Why don't you take a look at that step again, I'll be back.
And the book says that after we learn this and put it into practice, and then somebody comes and observes you about 6 weeks from now, you've reverted back to your old habits of
Hovering and staying there
hovering and
forever.
being, using lots of words. So, very good. All right, your job is to pick the next group that gets to go. Pressure's on.
How about those people?
You want to go.
Sure.
You're talking since I made it, right?
So we decided on an order of operations, and the first step that we do is parentheses, second is exponent, then multiplication, division from left to right, addition, subtraction, again, from left to right. Keep in mind that you should do multiplication and division before addition and subtraction.
So if I were teaching this in my class, I'd go to my first problem, which probably wouldn't be this complicated. It'd probably be like a simple one that just had parentheses, and we do that first, and then we move on to exponents, and then we move on to the bigger ones. So we'd look at it, and I would ask my students, do you see any parentheses in the problem? And we'd focus specifically on those parentheses, and I'd tell them like ignore the rest of the problem. And I'd ask them, what's 9 minus 5? And then we'd get to the 4, and I'd ask them to rewrite the whole problem again. So now that our parentheses are gone, I'd move back to exponents, so I'd ask them to look at this particular problem, and ask them, are there any exponents? And there would be 2, so we would look just specifically at this point and this point, and do the exponents, and we'd get this 81 and 16. Then I'd go to multiplication and division, and we look at it as a group because you have to do it from left to right. So I'd go to the 81 plus 3 times 16 divided by 4. And I'd ask them, where's the multiplication, where's the division, and then we'd start from left to right, wherever it ended up. And then when we had that left over, we'd have 81 plus 12, and again, we'd look at addition and subtraction. So we'd look at it in steps. This would be 1 step, this would be another, this one, and this one's 4 steps. In every single
And that's a picture that you can leave up until it's time to take a test, right?
Yeah.
And even beyond that, because order of operations is used in fractions,
Yeah.
it's used in a whole bunch of other things, decimals, and they could always go back to this and say, what do I do first?
And could you actually have students in groups make their own poster of order?
So
of
in my
operations?
class, we have a journal, and they actually created this, and like ours had like little things you could lift out, and it had like
Nice,
the example, and then it had the problem underneath. So that's what I did in my class. That's
nice.
the idea.
How did it work?
They use their journals, so it's worked out pretty well. They take them out, and they're like, can we use them?
Yay. Yay. Any questions, anyone? Yay. You guys get to pick the next group.
Anybody want to go? I can go. Wait, that wasn't my turn.
We're good? Okay. So they're both in 5th grade and 6th grade. I'm in 3rd grade, and we try to come up with something that we all kind of do together. And we came up with a circle map and how to organize our thoughts before writing. First step 1, just create the circle map itself. Okay? Get it on your paper, inner circle being your topic. So that would be step 2. Put your topic in the center circle. And that's just, my 3rd grade class, that right there can just be the difficulty right there, just getting that topic in the center circle. Okay? So after you've got your topic in your center circle there, now we're going to move down and list as many details as you can in the outer circle. And that's where we've written our little details there for them to see. Okay? Now once you've got all those details, everything you think you know about ancient Egypt, which would be our topic, ancient Egypt in there, everything you think you know about your topic that you've chosen for ancient Egypt, you're going to use 3 different highlighters to organize your details. So we've got a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, and a purple highlighter. So they highlight the details. They try to their best to organize them as best they can. Okay, and so once they've got that organized, now we're going to go to step 5. We're going to create a flow chart and organize each detail into its own spot. Okay, so we have our main topic, and then we have the green details, the purple details, and the yellow details. And after that, then they can organize all those details down. And when they're done with all that and all this is all finished, now we can begin with our first draft of writing. And so we all agree that we could see a lot of different areas where we could use that, not just writing. You can use it in social studies, you can use it in science, especially science, because they love to create organization for science to organize their ideas. And that's kind of what we came up with.
So what do you do with a class where half of them say, well, I don't know what a detail is?
That's where we start modeling.
I did a hard reset on my class today with classroom management. And I had my computer, had them all come in, and we were on rainy day schedules, so they were all in class a little early, and I said, I'm gonna show you a movie trailer. Really old movie trailer, and I want you to watch it, and then we're gonna do a circle graph on one of the characters in the movie trailer. And I did Matilda, and I said, okay, we're gonna do a circle graph on Miss Trunchbull, who's the principal in it. And you guys are gonna help me fill in all the details around it. Well, what's a detail? Okay, well, tell me how does Miss Trunchbull act as a character? And so filled it in about 5 minutes. And I said, okay, there you go. Do you want me to be Miss Honey, or do you want me to be Miss Trunchbull? Because that's where we're at right now. I can be Miss Honey, or I can be Miss Trunchbull. And so I had on this whiteboard Miss Trunchbull, and on that one Miss Honey. I said, you pick, because I can't be in the middle anymore. So it was a really good visual for them, and they created everything that went in the outside part of it. But they did do the helpless hand raiser, or I don't know. Yeah, we've only been back for 10 minutes, and you want me to think? Yes, I do. Bingo.
Any questions? All right, pick the next one.
You want to take it?
Sure.
Who are we picking?
To go.
Sure.
The next group to go.
I've been having
Okay.
Have you had one of these? Like, four total vitamins, but now I'm like, you're like a withdrawal.
Okay, so we're doing ours on science. So this is how to create bean bags. And bean bags are a way to grow plants. Instead of growing them in pots, we grow them in bean bags. So the first step is...
But pot's legal now.
That would be so much Xperia would say, no lie.
Until the parents of course will.
Oh, they already know. The kids come and tell me all the time, hey, Miss Paul, in the greenhouse, can we grow? I'm like, no, that's so
Sorry,
legal for you.
I didn't mean to interrupt you guys. That was just too funny to pass it.
So the first step is you need to collect 5 seeds and 1 Ziploc baggie. And so the students are going to go and get the materials from the back of the room. And they also need to collect 1 paper towel. The second step, once they have all their materials on their desk, they're going to take their plastic baggies and they're going to fill it a quarter of the way with water. Once their baggies are full, they're going to take their paper towel and they're going to place it into the baggie, and with a helper, they're going to staple those baggies shut so that the paper towel is stapled to the bag. Once they've done that, they're going to take their seeds and they're going to place their seeds along the top of the staples. And then once they've placed their seeds along the top, they're going to give it to an adult. And the adult is going to hang that on the wall or across the room, somewhere where it will get some light, doesn't need a lot of light. And their job is to, my student's job is to make a prediction. So what do we think is going to happen? So they're not used to seeing plants grow outside of the ground. They're used to seeing it grow in a pot or soil or something like that. But they should have already learned by reading that plants only need water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight to grow. So this should be everything it needs. But they can guess, they can make a prediction, say, oh, I think it's going to grow, there's no soil, or I don't think it's going to grow, it's inside. And depending on what happens, they'll make their observations, and either the plant will live or the plant will die. And if they predict that it's going to live, then good. If they predict it's going to die, then they need to tell me what. Why did it live, or why did it die?
Is the bag open when you staple it?
It's open.
So you have like a rim of staples around it?
Yeah, it's just stapled across the top. Just stapled across the top. And when I first did this, I actually sealed the bag, and the plants will still grow, but then they'll grow and get stuck. So I figured there was no reason to seal the bag, except it'll keep it from leaking, but there's no real need. And I just hung them up on clothespins, on a string across the worked on it.
And did you do a step-by-step with them like this, or did you?
Yeah.
How did you teach it?
Well, when I did it, it was okay. So this would have been helpful when I did it, because all I did is I had all of my materials and I did it step by step, and I explained to them. I did it first, so I showed them. Okay, first I'm going to take my bags. These are my materials, and showed them each of the materials, the ones that I wanted them to get. And I would have them go and get them. And I gave them the seeds. I gave them each the seeds that they needed. And then they waited at their desk with all their materials, and then I showed them, okay, I'm gonna fill my baggie quarter of the way full with water. And so I showed all my students that, filling it halfway. And so they lined up to fill the baggie with water, and that was traumatic for everybody. And then once they were full, this is really the trickiest part, filling the bag and then getting the paper towel, because they can't, it's hard for them to do two things at one time, holding a bag and filling it. That's kind of hard. And then I stapled the bags. So all they needed to do was take the bag, fill it with, put the paper towel in there, and then hold it so that I could staple it. And so they had to wait in line for me to staple their bags. And that's how I kind of organized my kids. But this part was a bottleneck, and it was kind of challenging to do. It would have been either nice to have help, or have more staplers, or give someone the job to be the stapler, or something
So
like
what
that.
you actually used was say-see-do.
Yeah. Yeah. I could have done it this way, but it was, when I did it, I had to show them each step and stop them at each step, because I didn't want them to go any further. So I actually didn't want them to know too much. Because if they did, then they would go too far and try to do it.
And I saw something like that last year at Corsco Elementary, where they did a DNA test, and there was all the steps involved and how they could actually separate. It was kind of gross actually, but they separate the DNA from, I think they eat cracker or something. I don't remember what they did. Something in it, not their spit. It was really, yeah, but they had strands of DNA in there, and I was like, whoa. And then they had a little like thing in a necklace, and all the kids were wearing their DNA around them. I kid you not, in a necklace.
That's crazy.
But then they had to write it that they had to do that went with it. But very similar, the step by step by step. But what wasn't on the board was the steps. So
Yeah.
constantly going back to the teacher. Now what do we do? I don't understand.
Yeah, and the hard part is if you don't have the step-by-step instructions, which I didn't have at the time when I was doing it, it takes longer because you have to wait for all the students to catch up, and then once all the students are there, then you give the next group of next set of instructions. So you're always waiting for that least common denominator, that either the slowest person in the classroom, when there's other students that want to get ahead. So there's going to be commotion happening. There's going to be, in science, for me that's okay. In science I don't mind as much commotion because I want them to be feeling around and trying to figure out what it is that they're doing. But if you're not comfortable with that, then you want to make sure that the students that need something to do have something to do and they can move on.
The nice thing is, in 5 years, you'll have this down pat, and it'll go so smooth, it will be ridiculous. I don't understand how it's so easy now, and it was so hard my first year. You really will have that aha moment of, oh my gosh, I got this.
I hope so.
You will. All right, any other questions? We have 2 groups left, 1 group left. I know we have golf and over on the end, so you guys get to choose. Did we pick? All right, let's keep it. So PE always lasts.
Yeah.
You know how it is in PE, it's like, you get picked last. And then,
You try to sell it to 6th graders as, we always say the best for last. Always the best, right?
Okay, so Megan is a kindergarten teacher and I have 7th grade math. So we decided to do a 7th grade math lesson with pictures because kindergarten math is not exactly what we're used to seeing for math. So I would review, I just started teaching ratios in my class, and so I would review how to simplify fractions first because that's a skill that they learn. It's a 5th grade standard, but then they would learn it. We'd review it again beginning of the year, and then when we come to ratios we need to have that skill. So review that and go over what a ratio is and the different pieces of a unit rate and things like that. Do some examples with them and then be able to apply it to their lives. So take this example, step 1 would be defining what the ratio is. So seeing that boy to girl would be 1-to-1 ratio. Step 2, we would have an example for them to look at, for them to see before we asked them to do it. So we have our 5 boys to 10 girls, simplifying it so it's a 1-to-2 ratio instead of 5-to-10. And then step 3 would be asking them to turn around and look at their classmates, count their classmates, how many boys, how many girls, and then simplify and find the ratio.
so step 2 is making the fraction. And
So step 2 is making the fraction, taking the information you have because we want them to count, to look at their classmates and see. And that way they can see, okay, well in this class there were 5 boys and 10 girls. So then I have my fraction that I can then write a simplified fraction and turn into a ratio.
And would you let them say it's also the reverse is true? There's 2 girls and
Yes,
1 boy.
and we would go over that it's
You
2
don't
to
have-
1. Yes, that the
And so,
reverse would be the
are there manipulatives that you can do with ratios?
Yeah, we could pull out the blocks. We have triangle, cubes. We have all sorts of manipulatives. They can use the fraction circles. And they could say, okay, well a fraction that I can break into thirds, but I can also take out of 6. There's now a 1-to-2 or a 3-to-5, depending on what fraction circle they pull out or amount of cubes they have.
I've seen some classes do it with M&Ms or
Yes,
Skittles.
mine are doing it with Skittles soon, with the unit rate of how many Skittles per bag, and then dividing it and making a ratio of, I'm going to choose 2 different colors, and they have to determine what that ratio is for each of their personal bags.
So the book did say that if your kids can't read, use pictures. So that works. Very good. Any questions? All
How
right.
many Skittles have you lost?
Go.
Haven't lost any yet. I'm doing it tomorrow, so I'll let you know next time. I'm sure they'll eat them right away.
I don't like these.
When they're done, they can eat them, but not until they meet my ratio.
You do with crayons. Those remind me of villages all the time. Because I have like 1,000 crayons in my classroom. I don't know why.
Alright, so this is our golf lesson. It's the introduction to the chip shot in golf. So we got 6 steps, and there's all pictures for all steps. So the first one is check the grip. which this is kind of related to a previous lesson, so they'll know what to do. And then the legs are in the shape of an A, arms the shape of a Y. So they'll know how to do that. We use a lot of letters. So the second step is, and they're going to say this aloud, it's the ABCs. So the A is check all around, B is I'm about to swing, and C is the other person and their partner is going to say all clear. They can only swing when that happens. So once they do these two, then they can go to the next 3 steps. And these will be different on different types of swings, but for this one, the chip shot is going to be L, swing, L. So there's like a back swing, connection, and then the follow through. And if you look at that and see exactly what they're supposed to do. And the last one is you leave the club on the ground because you don't want to run around with it. Go get the ball, come back, do a high five, give the ball to the next person, and then they can go. And you can just get a lot of reps in that way.
How did that work for you when you taught it?
Good. Yeah, I mean, we go over this a lot, especially the ABCs. So they know by heart, and yeah, you really have to go over safety.
And
Sure.
So explain this first, and then usually we'll demonstrate it, and then they go do it. So it's a say.
Stacy, do.
Yeah.
Have you tried posters in your PE classes yet?
I have. I mean, I use a whiteboard sometimes for even like the grip of like a badminton, different types of things. Yeah, this would be helpful.
Do you guys ever do vocabulary or rules of the game or anything like that?
Yeah, it just depends, I guess, on the grade level, what
Yeah.
you're doing. I mean,
I'll write out the rules on the whiteboard, just like basic rules.
So I saw McEwen at South High School use posters to pre-teach vocabulary for volleyball. So that they understood the words before she began to talk about, all right, let's learn how to dig, let's learn how to spike. And that was interesting. But it was one of the few times I saw posters or visuals being used in a PE class. So it could be hard if you're out at MLK and there's 80 students in your class and you're outside. So it's kind of a challenge. Cool. However, the step by step probably fits best in PE. It lays itself well to. Yay! Any questions? All right. Okay, so we're looking hard on long-term memory. And we looked and talked about the last time, what kind of memory do we get from just hearing it? Alright, and I remember I challenged you and said, some of you go to church, do you remember what the pastor spoke about yesterday? And I know the topic, but he spoke for an hour. Right? If we can, we said if we could see it, it's worth a what? Picture's worth 1,000 words. And if we can do it, then we have mastered. Okay. When I went to school, there was a lot of the teacher talking and the students writing, right? And when you went to college, was it like that? A lot of talk, and you were just writing. And so we would say that that's teacher input, 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 input. The book called it drop to drop, right? And then you ask the students to do something in return, output. Okay. Instead, what Stacy do? They said that there was an input and an output. What is the output portion? It is a checking for understanding. It's asking the students to produce or do or repeat or say something. And there was a pattern. Remember what that pattern looked like?
What does the pattern look like?
We didn't do our reading. It was Christmas break.
No, we didn't.
Oh, good.
I did, I just did it like the first day.
It's actually kind of a spiraling curriculum, right? And the idea is that say, see, do, right? And what happens here? There should be mastery. And this is where Dr. Jones says, it's not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. Okay, so we just talked about in PE, if we're looking at a sport and we're trying to coach a kid shooting free throws, and there's 10 steps, or how many steps in the free throw shooting? Feet, knees, elbow, wrists, right? Okay, all those things together. And do you break it down into 4 steps, you say? If they don't do the first step right, do you say, that's okay, let's go on to the next one?
No.
Why do we do this in English? Why is it that when I go to a 7th grade math class, I have kids that don't know how to do multiplication tables?
Then we'll skip the step.
A whole bunch. Mastery. And I understand, well, and you guys weren't even part of this. And in the last few years, there was a philosophy that went through the school systems called explicit direct instruction, and you will do this on this day, and you will do this on this day, and you will do this on this day, and the teachers are going, well, what if my kids don't get it? By God, they better get it, because you've got good, great teaching, and it's going to happen, and by this day, and by the way, I'm going to walk out of this class, and hear the next teacher complete your sentence. I literally heard administrators say that. Okay? That's gone. All right? The pendulum swung way over here, and now it'll swing back. By the way, you'll see that again. It'll be around long enough that it'll go back, and it'll come back. But we can't move on until we have mastery. And so 4th grade teachers, if your kids can't multiply, we're done. 3rd grade teachers, if your kids can't read, we're done. So when we get to 7th grade and I encounter students that are not reading at grade level, we're in trouble, because we teach them to read up until about 4th grade, and then after that, they're expected to read to learn, right? First they learn to read, and then they read to learn. If they can't do that in the 5th and 6th grade independently, we're in trouble. Okay? Let me show you. Let me say it. Let me show you. Let's do it. Right? And then do mastery, 1 step, and then we move on. So when we were looking at the theme science, he said, I made everybody do step 1 and they stopped. Right? Everybody get your bag open. Step 2, everybody get your piece of paper. Step 3. Can you do that? Can you start thinking about the lessons that you have in your classes where there can actually be steps? And do you see how kids can identify with that better? Are you following me? Are you just anxious to go?
It kind of breaks the lesson down into smaller chunks to where they feel more accomplished.
Exactly.
Because then they feel like, I've had success with this little bit, and now here's my next little bit of success, instead of like, here's the full big chunk, and I messed up back here, and so I didn't get the whole thing, so I was
Exactly.
wrong.
I think they have more ownership of that success.
True. And they get the easy win, the low-hanging fruit, right? Okay. 3 phases of teaching. They said setting the stage, acquisition, and consolidation. How much time do you spend on getting students to buy in that what you're doing is relevant and important to where they're at in their life? Okay? How many times, especially the older you get, the older your students get, do you hear, why do I have to learn this? Why is this important? Math teachers, raise your hand. Come on now. Because algebra, forget about it. Why do I have to learn this? I'm never going to use it. How do you make it relevant? You've got to set the stage. And you can't just say it's on the test. Why?
Because they don't care about the subject.
How many of you would admit that you, for the first time in your life, you discovered that students really don't care about grades? Most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. How many are how much percentage-wise do you think your kids are motivated by grades?
Like
Depends on the time of the quarter. That's that last week and a half. Mine were very concerned about their
Also
grades.
depends on the grade.
Up until then, they don't give a care.
That's correct.
I've seen 8th grader. I've seen 8th graders go, "Oh my God, what do you mean I have to stay here another year because you didn't finish?" You know, same with, high high school kids. Senior cares about his grades when he's trying to get out of high school. May not have cared about him until senior year, but
No, that's where they get a wake-up call their freshman year. It's the first time in the state of California where they're really held accountable to grades. And you're not moving on, and you gotta repeat, you gotta go to summer school because you didn't get the grades. But y'all, most of you, I won't make a general statement, most of you were overachieving students who loved to go to class and thought that school was awesome. No? Most of you.
No.
Okay? And now you're finding that you're the outlier. You're the exception. You're the odd one. I mean, you're the one that was overachieving. And all these other kids, really, honestly, the grades aren't important. What are important to kids right now
Video games.
in your classroom?
oh,
Getting on from
Recess.
What's that?
Recess and
Recess. Why is recess important?
They get to stop listening to me.
And
They get to
Play.
move.
friends. That's number one reason kids like to come to school is the opportunity to socialize. Okay? How can you leverage that and use it to your advantage?
fair share.
Okay, so certainly you can allow them to be in groups, cooperative learning, right? Or, I'm sorry, we're losing recess time, right? Some of that you can do. You can't take away all that recess. You get in trouble.
I always plan an extra 10 minutes of PE time. So, I put it in my plan because I've got to give them 20 minutes each pop to be able to meet that requirement. So I'll put 30 minutes on the board for PE every day. Every day there's 30 minutes except for Wednesdays. There's the 30 minutes for PE, so I can make their 200 minutes every 2 weeks.
Nice.
And so I use that against them. Oh, well, you guys are slowing down. You're not getting enough done. We're not going to get our full 30 minutes. We're going to only have 20 minutes. It stinks. I'd rather have 30 minutes of PE, and all of a sudden here comes a whole lot more work.
The motive of being able to use technology in your classroom, your kids are motivated, they aren't motivated by grades. That's a hard one. So why is setting the stage so important? Do you get it now? When do we use algebra?
Construction.
Shopping.
How many of you use Excel spreadsheets? How many of you have ever written a formula on Excel spreadsheet? I kind of like it. It's fun, right? I want to know. I have to put data together and statistics, and you got to know how to write a formula. Where'd that knowledge come from? That skill set. Algebra. All right. How many of your kids are someday going to live on their own?
Most of mine will their parents for the rest of their lives.
Right? And so you could talk about things like let's measure the carpet. I had kids that go out on the football field and measure the square inches of a football field. How do you get oblong shapes and geometry, all of the measurements of area and formulas and how much volume of air is in this room, and why is that important, and start to talk about the buy-in, setting the stage. How do we do that in history? How many kids, I can't tell you how many kids I run into that say, history is so boring. Why?
It's much fun. It's my favorite.
You know why it's boring? Because we're running up against the number one problem in America, reading. They don't want to read. How do you make history come alive?
Act it out.
Okay, you can act it out. But how do you make it personal to the kid?
Show them where they came from.
So we talk about history, and one of the things I would talk about with my students who are looking at a white man, I'd say, you're not the first group of people to be discriminated against in this country. What do you mean? Well, it started with the Irish. Actually, it started with the Indians before that. Irish, yeah. So we tell them the story of the Potato Famine and how they were servants in England, and then they came over to America, and the British were already here and mistreated them when they got here, and they didn't have any other trades to go into, so they became the policemen and the firemen. And still to this day, there's more Irish Boston police officers than any other nationality. And then I tell them they had to be fierce warriors. Did you know that there's more Scottish people of Scottish descent who've won the Congressional Medal of Honor than any other race. Why? Because they had to run and fight to survive. Let's talk about discrimination in race, and we can go back to whatever period in history and find it and make it personal. Now, y'all are listening to me. I can see. You're like, wow, that's cool. Right? All right. You've got to get them to buy in. Okay? And you have all kinds of ways of labeling this. Fred Jones calls it setting the stage. But what do you guys call it? A hook? Activating prior knowledge. There's all kinds of buzzwords that all mean the same thing, right? Do you work at it?
Yeah, doesn't come easy.
Did you notice how you started paying attention more when I started telling some stories that you're like, wait a minute, come on. Right? Okay. What about English? How do we get them to buy into English?
They're connected to the things that they're doing, that they're interested in.
Does it matter what they read as long as it explores the standards? And is
Same
it,
with writing.
are your sites telling you what your students have to read?
No.
You have a lot of freedom now that you didn't have before. Before, you used to have the anthology. Okay, you're reading this story on this day, you're reading this story on that day. You were stuck. Now you can choose, right? Now, are there ways of tying it to kids' culture and background? By the way, did you know that that's a teaching standard? I believe it's standard 4, CSTP number 4. Identifying and relating to students' culture and their background. Okay? Did you know you evaluated on that standard? It's in there. It must be evaluated on it. All right, what is acquisition?
How are you going to deliver the material?
How are the kids getting it? So we can use the SACY Do, we can use the VIP, right? Pictures, projects, good. Consolidation, what's another word for that one? What does Fred Jones mean by that? Students owning it, right? They're able to assimilate it, put it in their own words, and put it out. We went to school and we were supposed to take in the information and then regurgitate it exactly the way the teacher said it, right? We really weren't challenged with make it your own and chop it up and put it back together and come up with your own concept. But now, Common Core, that's what it's all about, right? How many ways are there to do a math problem? As long as you get the answer, great. But the test says what? How did you get there? And part of the answer to the test is explaining your answer, correct? You're defending your answer. So when we talk about English, we're talking a lot about performing an opinion or forming an argument. I used to tell my juniors and seniors, all right, we're going to write a persuasive essay. What? It's an argument. You guys are professional arguers. You'll do great. No, we aren't. See? Okay. And it's built into a teenager to argue. Hey, it's going to rain tomorrow. No, it won't. Okay. Sky's blue. No, it isn't. It's gray. All right. Consolidation comes with guided practice, independent practice, generalization, and discrimination. Part of one of the things that you might be doing is sending home what? Homework. What are the inherent problems with homework?
Half of them you don't bring it back.
Okay, so it's not done. What else?
They don't know how to do it.
They don't get help on it. All right. So let's define what is the purpose of homework.
To practice. That's what was taught.
Okay. So should it be something that they already have mastery of, and they're just practicing, or something that you've introduced and they need to go home and develop more skills for?
Parents expect this.
Expect
Something that-
homework.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but what is the purpose of homework from your end? Is it to practice, or is it to develop the skills that you barely taught that day?
I mean, there's the whole idea of like the flipped classroom.
Yes.
Where that you can send things home that you introduced or maybe not even really introduced and let them kind of struggle through it by themselves, and then when they get to class they'll have their questions ready, and so you can spend your teaching time not, you know, introducing and going over what it is, but actually answering the questions and getting into the practical side of it.
But that is running uphill right now, right? If you're the only one doing that, people aren't going to understand it. They're not going to buy into it. You know what I mean? You've got to have a whole site that's explained that to the parents. There has to be a lot of buy-in. There has to be that expectation of
Well, and
my
like,
kid's going to struggle with.
What I've seen mostly is like 30-minute videos of a teacher just basically explaining like, this is what it is. Here's a problem to practice. See what, you know, see how far you get. Ask any questions that you have, and then when we come to class tomorrow, we'll go over it.
Right. Have you been trying that?
Well, I teach kindergarten, so no, but my mom teaches 5th grade, and her entire math is flipped. So, and it's really cool, like, because she doesn't spend any time answering stupid questions. I mean, not any time, but you know, those questions get out, and then they actually get to the part where they're actually learning.
So that's set up ahead of time, and with the expectation, and the parents have bought in.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't just
And it is
decide to
pretty
do
much
that
their
tomorrow.
whole site, you know, the upper grades have done that.
Aside from that philosophy, what we're saying tonight is that homework should be practicing something that they already know how to do. Why? One of the reasons is we're paying you to teach the kids, not your parents. Second, you're the expert. You've gone to school, you've got the experience, you've got the help, you've got all the coaching. The third is you have many parents that struggle with the same material that you're studying at home. Maybe not in kindergarten, but we've got a lot of Spanish only or Punjabi only or Hmong, you know, and you're bringing home just a simple reading thing that they can't do. Okay? When you start bringing home advanced geometry and algebra 2 or physics or chemistry, I'm gone. I don't know how to help my kid. And I had a situation last year where my stepdaughter's bringing home problems that the teacher never really explained. Well, found out that there was a sub going on, and it was a mess. But she was trying to figure out how to do these problems on her own. And we, even together, looking at Khan Academy and the web and reading the book, and we couldn't figure it out. Could not come close to figuring it out. So not all of your problems can your parents help you with. How many of you have kids who have single parents? How tough is it of a mom of 3 with a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old to come home at 5:30, get dinner going, get cleaned up, try to get kid to a basketball practice, right? Now what time is it? Now it's 9 o'clock, we've got baths to do. Does that mama have any time to help with homework? She might have time to nag. Maybe. And I will tell you from observation that one of the last things mama wants to do is have a conflict with her children. It's easier just to say, don't worry about it, go to bed, than it is to say, is your homework done? Why not? Get it out. I don't want to do it. I didn't give you that choice. Get it out. But it's hard. I don't care. And right, 20 minutes of this? You think your kids argue with you? Where do they practice it? You know what I'm saying? I get it. Your parents expect homework. But it's becoming less of a issue. And what really, when we get to see high school, are you sending a lot of homework home? The most homework I've seen from the 5 kids that have gone through my house is 5th and 6th grade. That's where they get all the homework. By the time they get to high school, there's hardly any homework.
My daughter was in junior high and she would come home and like work on it until like 10 o'clock at night. Now that she's in high school, she works on it maybe an hour and she's done.
That's the way it is. I don't know why. But one of the things we've tried to do is stop bunking kids because they didn't do their homework. And that's why in Madera Unified, you have that crazy 40, 40, 10, or whatever it is, 45, 45, 10 grading system. Because we looked at grades and we said we are flunking a ton of kids only because they didn't do homework. So what were teachers' responses? Well, we've got to teach them responsibility. What was the administration's response? Where is that in the standards? Where is responsibility tested on the state tests? Well, it's not real life. Well, they didn't turn it in on time, so I gave them a 0. Is that how real life works? Is there anything in life that you can't turn in late and still be okay with? You might have a penalty, but you can turn it in late, can't you? Just about anything except for court, right? Even taxes. What happens if you don't file taxes on the 15th and you file them on the 20th?
Get an extension.
You can file an extension. What if you don't do that?
Get arrested.
You don't. You don't get arrested. You might get a fine. You might have to pay a little more. So is it realistic to say, you turned it in late, I'm going to take a few points off? Or you turned it in late, I'm giving you a 0?
Few points off.
Now I'm getting on my soapbox, it has nothing to do with that. Where's my, I gotta make sure I grab a dry erase and not a permanent marker.
Hey, you don't wanna write on that with a Sharpie?
I don't want to be back here tomorrow cleaning it up. Okay, how many of you know about the power of 0? Yay.
What?
Here's your first assignment. I got 0 out of 10. Okay, so most of you have a 90, 80, 70 percentage, right? And I do the next assignment. How many points do I have?
10 out of 20.
10 out of 20. Everybody, what grade is that?
50.
Wait a second. This is an F. Wait a minute. I got an F and an A, and my grade is still an F? Okay, let's say I did the next assignment, and I did perfect out of 10. What is my grade now?
20 out of 30.
And what grade is that?
C.
That is a
B plus.
D. Isn't that not 66%?
Yep, 66%.
And now I got another 10, because I'm just that good. Out of 10, and now I have what? 30 out of 40, and I have a
75%.
C. And then I do the next assignment, 10 out of 10, and how much do I have? 40 out of 50, and I finally raised my grade to a B, all because I missed one assignment. Let's say I even tried on this assignment and I didn't get it. Let's give this a subject. Is it possible that you're teaching a new concept that students know nothing about, and they try it, and they don't do so well, but after a while they catch on and they start hitting it out of the park? But other teachers are still penalizing them for not getting it the first time out of the box. Right? So what if, do you see the power of 0? What if instead we taught to mastery? What does that mean and what does that look like?
It means that if you're trying to teach this subject where they got a 0 out of 10, you should have dropped back and taught them part of that where they could succeed. You should have taught them
Or this is the standard, and I only give you one grade.
what?
This is the standard, whatever the standard is.
Oh, okay.
4.4, 0.6, I don't know, right? And I only give you one grade. So we have all these practices leading up. Now this is nothing to do with Fred Jones, and really nothing to do with Madera Unified. It's just Steve Thornton's opinion about something, which $3 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So there you go. My opinion, in a couple of bucks you can have a cup of coffee. Thank you. I'm glad you got it. But the point is that if we're really trying to teach to mastery, shouldn't we grade at that point? This is all fluff, isn't it? Why do we do this? Because we don't know any other method. And this is the way we were raised. This is the way we went to school. And your teacher said, boy, I got a teaching responsibility. You better get the grade in on time. And y'all, well, most of you, were overachievers who said, heck no, I'm not missing that assignment. I'm going to make sure it's turned in. Right? How many of our students, though, struggle but still want to learn? And that, grades don't turn them on, but your approval does. That pat on the back, the stamp, right? All that does matter. Just a thought, just throwing it out there. Especially as we start thinking about say, see, do, or I do, we do, you do, same idea, right? And we're looking at mastery. And that's what we're grading. Did you hear some of this when you were taking your SPED accommodations classes and credentialing? Look at mastery instead of the process of getting there. Could this process look different for each kid? We were talking about a flipped class. Could this be different for every kid, the pathway? All right, now I'm not going to go there because you're like, oh no, you're going to make me think. We just got back to school one day and made me think.
I know.
All right. Lots of ideas in the book. He likes to go old school and talk about going to the board. But regardless of buying into that or not, you've got to teach to mastery. You've got to get them there. And if they're not mastering it, slow down. Okay? Wouldn't it be better? We used to say that the curriculum was a mile wide and an inch deep. Wouldn't we rather have the curriculum much more narrow, but greater depth of knowledge and skill and ability to do that? Make sense? All right. You have the homework for next time and the evaluations.